It's a hurricane. Okay. The big breeze that is blowing at the moment over Jamaica. Usually, Mr. Speaker, when something of this nature happens in the past, or has happened in the past, our students normally call and say there's a problem. I don't think that there's been any call. And as a result of the inquiries of the press, I spoke to the leader of the Bahamian students at the Mona campus in Kingston and the former head of the students at the University of the Northern Caribbean in Mandeville in Jamaica, and both say that as of now there is no issue of their safety, that they are still with power and water, and that essentially they are just taking the necessary precautions and bunkering down. And so this is not like the situation where at the previous hurricane there was an actual call by the students for us to airlift them out of Jamaica. So that is the status as we have it now, and I'd like to undertake to keep the matter under review, working, of course, with my colleague, the Minister for Education, the Member of Parliament for Marathon on that issue. So just to reassure the country, to the best of our knowledge, information, and belief, our students are all safe in Jamaica and are taking the necessary precautions to protect themselves according to the directions of the government of Jamaica. And we'll keep the matter under review. I would say for my own constituents that notwithstanding tomorrow's warning, there is still going to be a branch meeting tonight at the Doris Johnson School at 8 o'clock. The wind is not going to stop that meeting tonight. I will be present. I will be present. I will be present. And I hope to see you all at Doris Johnson tonight. No, I don't suppose you'd be there. But that is a good departure point for where we left off, because what happened just before we left was a comment was made about some of the remarks made by some of our members this morning, the mover of the bill and one of the members of the backbench, about their own past history and their pride of having come from humble beginnings and being able to represent their people in this place. And this is a matter which perhaps some people don't understand the great pride which we all feel in the great story of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, which we are seeking to repeat. And that is the story of the social mobility of our people, to be able to move from humble beginnings, and within one generation, you're able to move from where you started out by dint of your ability and training to the next level. And I think that on each occasion, given that our society is an oral society, anecdotal, we need to tell the story. Often at funerals, you would hear the leader of our party say, until the lions have their authors, the tale of the hunt is going to be told by the hunter. And we are the hunted, or have been the hunted, and we are going, having achieved the success that we have achieved, are going to tell our story.
That's right.
And, you know, at every opportunity. And the last time there was a set-to in here between myself and over some remark that I'd made, some issue he had taken between the member for Montague and myself. I made the very careful choice of the word cultural difference. And culture, Pat Ramming describes culture as the way we live. The way we live. And we live one way, you perhaps live another way. But I look at it this way, Mr. Speaker. One of the things I had to learn as a member of Parliament was when people came to see you and they started to tell you what their issues were, I, for a long time, couldn't understand why they wouldn't just get to the point. Say, look, I've come here for this, can you do that? And I get the point, and then that's finished, and then you move on to the next person. But that's not the culture of the Bahamas. The culture of the Bahamas is this. They come, They have to establish how they are linked to you. They say, I know your mother. I used to work with her at the Ministry of Education. She used to be Dalro's secretary. And, you know, she taught me all I know about typing. And she was a very good woman. And, you know, I happened also to be from Centerville. I used to live on 9th Terrace. And I used to always pass your house on Collins Avenue as I was walking to school. So, having established that, right, they can then go on to make the request. As a matter of fact, they often say, and I think we may be even distant cousins. That's how we go. And we are, in this place, a reflection of the people we govern.
That's right.
So why would you want to begrudge the opportunity for someone who has made such a great rise in the country from humble beginnings, the opportunity to say, look, I've accomplished much, and I want to tell people what I've done, and I want to encourage others to do the same. And it's not a new phenomenon, you know. When I was an observer on the observer mission for the Commonwealth in South Africa back in 1992, the soldiers there of the apartheid army were always in some kind of conflict with the young Africans on the streets of Soweto. They couldn't understand this. Why would these young Africans, black men, be under the light at 9, 10 o'clock in the day, simply standing around talking? They just couldn't, the soldiers couldn't understand that. And what they would do is they'd take these Caspers and they would ride these military vehicles and they would ride right through the group of them, just interrupt what the guys were doing. And of course, what would happen next? There would be a fight that would ensue. And all that was happening was, that's part of their culture. They just stand under the light and talk till nighttime and they go to sleep. And we had to constantly speak to the military in South Africa that if you are dealing, till the army, of course, was integrated, if you are dealing with Africans in South Africa, you have to deal with them and understand the culture of the people that you're dealing with. And so I say again, our culture is anecdotal. It's oral. We want to tell our stories. And that's what we're going to do here in this parliament. People are inspired by the example of their leaders. They say, I can do that. I can do that.
That's right.
You know, people are asking today about Sidney Poitier. Who, Mr. Speaker, who could have imagined that a man born as a premature child, taken home in Miami in a shoebox by his parents, and was able, after he was able to recover himself as a baby, taken back by his parents, Cat Island farmers. This is in the 1930s now. And taken back to Cat Island, raised in Cat Island, and then grow up to become the first Bahamian, the first black American to win an Academy Award in Hollywood. Who could have imagined that story? Who? And he's a Bahamian. When you read his story, The Measure of a Man, the first 100 pages of the book talks about his life in the Bahamas. And this is no play story. No play story. He remembers, he starts off the book, Mr. Speaker, by saying, I'm laying in my home in California. I'm flipping through 100 channels on the TV. And I can't find anything I want to watch on TV. So I throw the television changer away, the unit away, the remote away. He says, and then he says, I said to myself, how ungrateful am I? Because I remember what I used to do for entertainment in Cat Island when I was a boy. He said, I used to lay on the lap of my sister Teddy on the porch outside my parents' house. The coconut barks are burning to make sure the mosquitoes don't bite us that night. And they're telling me stories to make me go to sleep. Now that's a Bahamian story. The coconut bark, when he said that, I mean, everybody who grew up in the islands remembers the coconut bark burning to make sure the mosquitoes don't bite. That's a Bahamian story. Bahamian story. When he gave his evidence in the case of Disney in the court of Delaware, and he was made in the testimony to give his story before giving his testimony in the courts, And he was finished his story. The judge said, that is a remarkable story. A remarkable story. Because who could imagine it? That you then move up to New York at 15, you teach yourself English by reading the New York Times to yourself and copying what people say on the radio. That's how you get to make sure that you know proper English. And when you speak to him today, that's the mark of that man, is the proper English and the eloquence of the person. And he did that. His contribution, first contribution to the country, 1950, a movie called No Way Out. It's a movie with Tony Curtis. He's black, Tony Curtis is white, Sidney Poitier is black. And the two of them struggle together, black and white. And there's this theme. What did the authorities in the Bahamas do in 1950? They banned the movie. The movie couldn't be shown here. So what happened next? A citizens committee was formed. Max Thompson, the former judge. You had Dr. Cleveland Eneas, A. Leon McKinney, C.R. Walker. All of these people got together and formed something called the Citizens Committee to try and overturn the ban for the showing of the film, which they successfully did. And that became the nascent, Dr. Cleveland Eneas was also there. That was the nascent movement, Jackson Burnside, the nascent movement for the creation of the first political party in the country, which came in 1953. So, when the kids today ask you, what did Sidney Poitier do? I mean, that's the starting point. That's the starting point. And many other Bahamians of the Prime Minister's generation, of my own generation, can remember the stories of when they first met him, the contribution he made to the struggle for majority rule, the contributions he made when I told them Buck and the Preacher when the film was first shown here. It was a benefit. The first film about black cowboys. Black cowboys. We never heard about black cowboys before. Sidney Poitier did a story. He and the Indians, the black cowboys and the Indians got together to defeat the cavalry. He was always concerned about image. And I said to the young people from COB who came to talk to me about it, I said, you have no idea what it was like to be raised in a milieu that said everything about you was negative. Yes. You know, your skin color was wrong, your nose was the wrong size, your hair was wrong, everything was wrong. But he was able to, as an actor, to frame his career in such a way that he set an example and changed the mindset of a Eurocentric culture to ensure that our dignity was protected and uplifted. So that's what he did. And that's why we have to continue to tell the story. And that's why we have to support the Member of Parliament, because he told his story of Michael, about how he rose up. And the Member of Parliament for South Andros, who all said, we started from humble beginnings. And that's how we tell our stories, to make sure that our kids know that you can start off from one position in this country and you could end up at the top of the heap. So, I hope, whether it was meant deliberately or not, and I understand all the things about efficiency, because nobody argues more about time than me, you know? I think my colleagues should tell you, when the funeral, 1 hour, I gone. You know, that's it. You know, that's my contribution to it. And, you know, I hope that our politics can become more efficient, but we can't deny people the example to tell their stories. That's part of the culture. That's part of our story, and so we're going to continue to tell the story. And talking about and encouraging people to be something, that you can be something, and to never stop, no matter where you start. That's what this is about. Mr. Speaker, there's a lady named Doris Strong who was 99 years old. And she died a couple of weeks ago. She was the grandmother of one of my classmates in school, a man named David Thurston. And the reason I tell this story in connection with this bill is that you will remember, or you may remember, a couple of years ago, there was an attack on Sir Lyndon Pinling and the fact of his birth, or where he was born in the country. Because I heard the Member of Parliament for, the distinguished leader of the opposition and Member of Parliament for Kalani say that he had to have his birth registered by way of an affidavit. I think the member from ICAL said a similar thing. And Ms. Strawn, I'd like to first extend my condolences and to thank her for, she was part of this vast army, if you want to call them Pinling's army, that all existed out there. And it was interesting that she lived a long life, and near the end of her life, she was called from the reserves to make this contribution, which she was happy to make, to say, I knew when he was born, I knew he was born in Nassau, and I can testify to the time when he came home. And that shut up everybody. And she made that contribution to the reputation of the founder of our country. You see, because that's the other thing about this business, is that part of eternal life, if you wish, or life after death, if you wish, is protecting the reputation of the deceased.
Yeah.
And I realize that every day about my parents, that as long as I'm alive, I step in the gap anytime their reputation is attacked, because I'm able to defend their reputation in a way they cannot. And she did that for Lyndon Pinling. And so I want to mark her passing. But I also want to make the point, the broader point about the law, is that there are some peculiarities about our law on the registering of births and deaths, which I don't quite understand. And I think we have to look at some measure of reform. And the member for Long Island, I think, started in this direction this morning. And that is, if my recollection of the law is correct, you need to register a birth within 2 years of the birth. Otherwise, you cannot register the birth in the Registry of Births and Deaths. So after 2 years is up, the only way you can actually record a birth is if you do this affidavit. So many people have found themselves in this situation where their births were not recorded within the 2-year period of their birth, and so therefore they have no mechanism for recording the birth. I can't figure out why there's a 2-year limitation. Can't figure it out. Maybe we have to look at that as a matter of reform. And further, the question of mistakes. If a mistake is made or an error is made, there's no way of correcting it. There's nothing in the law which allows the registrar to actually correct a mistake that is made. So you have problems which arise out of that. So I think it may be a good idea to look at further reform of those matters to see whether or not those things can be corrected. I would like, before sitting down, Mr. Speaker, to congratulate the Member of Parliament for North Abaco for beginning a new era in the politics and history of Abaco. He follows a distinguished predecessor, but his is the beginning of a new era with his vision of what is going to happen for Abaco in conjunction with his colleagues. And when I saw him sitting here today, I remembered the very first time I met him, which was, I went to Abaco and people were saying, you know, we need a candidate, PLP needs a candidate, and you really have to meet Renato Curry. And they arranged a dinner at the Great Abaco Beach Hotel. I think Farron, you both, Julian Cooper may have been there. There were about 4 or 5 or 6 of us. And that evening, after the dinner was finished, I called the Prime Minister straight away. I said, you have got to meet this man. You have got to get him to run for us, because this is Abaco's future. Clear-minded, steady, steadfast, a vision for the future, and unflinching. And around him, a group of young men and women who were dedicated to the forward movement of Abaco. And I am really pleased that the Prime Minister and colleagues in the Progressive Liberal Party chose him as the candidate. It was the right choice, and we now have him as the Member of Parliament. And I said also to him that I remember on that evening, and this again goes to this story, this question of telling our stories, because there's a man who's a friend of mine named Glenn McDonald in Abaco, and he's standing up after, as Renato and the Prime Minister are speaking to the press on the night of the victory. And Glenn is very, very expressive and doesn't mince words, but he was so excited this evening with his victory. And he said something which I'll never forget. He said, "Isn't this something? We are going to take to Parliament someone from Murphytown."
Yes, yes.
Now, that said a lot to me, because what it meant was that, and again, I don't know the history of Abaco, but you know, what I know is there's Marsh Harbor, and then on the other side, there's Dundastown and Murphytown. And what this meant to him was someone from a humble settlement was able to rise up to go to Parliament. And that's the story we continue. And so I want to congratulate him. And we have pledged, all of us, heard the Member of Parliament for West End, Member of Parliament for Marathon today, pledge to work together. We're not perfect, and we're not going to get it right all the time. But we are going to pledge to work to uphold all the things which are right and good for the peace and good order of the Bahamas, but also to uphold the ordinary people of this country, to give them a chance, because we got a chance. You know, I stepped outside today at lunchtime, and this is the thing I like about the Bahamas, and Nassau is a small city, that people still feel it's, that safe and secure. As politicians, as public figures, they can walk up to you, talk to you, say, whatever they wish. And the ladies were complaining about BTC and saying to me, I'm the Minister of Immigration, when are you all going to do something to take back BTC? And of course, the negotiations are going on, because she was saying how poorly they're being treated as employees on the job there. And of course, we all know the poor service by the phone company. So not a moment too soon. Not a moment too soon. Help and hope is on the way. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And there's a lot of doom and gloom being preached about us. I saw an editorial this morning from our favorite critic, who was saying, what a terrible group we are. We can't do anything right, and that this mythical figure who's going to be called upon like de Gaulle to come back and rescue the nation.
They did use de Gaulle.
Now, the interesting thing about de Gaulle, though, right, that's the first thing. But the interesting thing about de Gaulle was when de Gaulle said he was going, he quit. He left. He left. He didn't look back. He didn't try to arrange a comeback. He didn't try to sabotage his colleagues. He says, look, you didn't vote for my constitution, I gone. Not a backward glance. As a matter of fact, it's so bad, Mr. Speaker, with de Gaulle, that he didn't even allow the officials to come to his funeral when he died. He had a funeral out in the country, in his country church, and the French officials were not there. So no official funeral, nothing. He says, I'm gone, that's it, I have nothing more to do with you. You rejected my constitution. Now that's what you call a man, right? Okay. So I don't think there's any comparison between de Gaulle and, who. But so, Mr. Speaker, I would say through you to the member who spoke before me, forgive us our pride. Forgive us our pride in our modest accomplishments. Forgive us our pride. We have pride in our modest accomplishments. And I also say, Father, forgive him, because he doesn't know what he's doing or what he says. That's not what I don't think he means it. I don't think he means it. The bill is important. It's a good amendment, because what it is doing is it is helping to localize authority. in our country. And more of this is coming. I mean, the Member of Parliament for West End and Bimini is fast developing new areas of opportunity. Bimini is growing at a great pace, and we were just talking the other day about some of the legislative changes that will have to come so that, Joe Jones and Susan can develop their businesses in Alistown and in Porgy Bay and enrich the culture of the country, but also make themselves have more wealth for themselves and their children. That's what the PLP is going to do over this next 5 years. It's pledged to do that. And it is going to do it slowly but surely, chipping away day by day. And I think it's the Americans who said, "Damn the torpedoes." Straight ahead, not looking left, not looking right. We have a mission to accomplish.
Yes.
We have a job to do, and we've got to do it 1 foot in front of the next. Forward, ever. Backward, never. Not looking backward. So, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to make those observations and say, once again, the great pride I have myself at joining all colleagues at being a part of this great democracy, what our Prime Minister describes as the best little country in the world. I love the country. My colleagues share that love and admiration for this country. I think all of us will work hard to make it a success. So congratulations to the new member, and let's hope that there is not this sneering of our accomplishments. As I say, I don't think it's meant that way, but I just want to be sure that on this occasion there's a fair warning that we take it the way it was done, as a smear on our reputation. And we will stand up and protect our reputation and tell our stories and speak up for ourselves so long as we are in this place. Thank you.